Welcome to the second part of our screencast on hemophilia. In part A, we talked about the biology of the disease. Here in the second part, we'll talk a little bit about why it has come to be known as the royal disease and how it has played a role in history. I mentioned in the last screencast that Queen Victoria of Great Britain passed the gene for hemophilia onto most of the royal families in Europe. This is actually her pedigree. You can see her right here at the top as this little half red circle. She had one X chromosome that had the hemophilia mutation and one X chromosome that was normal. Of her 9 children, only 3 of them got her mutated X chromosome: Alice, Leopold, and Beatrice. Unfortunately, through just those 3, the gene became prolific in European royalty, and this was not helped by the fact that there was inbreeding in the family. In fact, if you look at the current Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, who's right here, you'll notice that she's actually married to her 3rd cousin. Both of them are direct descendants of Queen Victoria. So all of this begs the question, where did Queen Victoria's mutated gene come from? If you look at her pedigree, neither her father or her mother were carrying the hemophilia gene. We know that. That leaves basically 2 options. Either there was a spontaneous mutation that occurred in that gene on the X chromosome within the queen herself, and the odds of that are calculable. It's about 1 in 50,000, or perhaps more likely, she was an illegitimate child. This idea has been addressed in a book by D.M. Potts called Queen Victoria's Gene. In the case study that you will be completing on hemophilia, you will be looking at several of Queen Victoria's descendants. I want to talk just a little bit about her relatives in the Russian royal family. Alexandra was a granddaughter of Queen Victoria who married the Russian Tsar, Tsar Nicholas II. You can see their line right here. You'll notice that soon thereafter, the Russian royal line ceases to exist. Here's a little bit about why. This is a picture of Alexandra and the Tsar's family. You'll notice that their first 4 children were girls. This is a good thing if hemophilia runs in your family. But Russian law at the time says that a male had to occupy the throne, and the Tsar was stressed out about his lack of sons. Finally, their 5th child, Alexei, was a boy, but he unfortunately inherited the mutated hemophilia gene from his mother and suffered from the condition. If you can imagine this little boy, the future heir of Russia, all of his family's hopes and dreams are invested in him, and he has 4 older sisters that spoil him rotten and call him baby. Because of Alexei's condition, any small injury could lead to his death, and this stressed the family tremendously. At the time, the chemical reactions that led to blood clotting were not understood, nor were the genetics of the disease. For that reason, doctors were not able to offer much in the way of healing or help. Particularly Alexei's mother, Alexandra, became obsessed with finding help for him. She began to rely more and more on the advice of a mystical faith healer named Rasputin, believing that he had the ability to help her boy. As time went on, Rasputin's influence over the royal family began to extend to government and military affairs, and this made the Tsar increasingly unpopular. This all came to a head in 1917 with the Russian Revolution and overthrow of the Tsarist autocracy. The entire family was exiled to Siberia, where they were then murdered by a firing squad in a cellar. Following the murders, the bodies of all of the family members, except for Alexei and one of his sisters, were found. Because there was no body, rumors began to circulate that Alexei had been allowed to escape. In fact, several people around the world started to claim that they were Alexei and therefore the heir to the Russian throne. In 2007, 2 more bodies were found in the area where the family was killed. And in 2008, DNA testing proved that the bodies were in fact Alexei and one of his sisters. So no one in the family survived, and it is thought that much of their downfall was due to the stress that Alexei's hemophilia caused on the family. This concludes the screencast on the history of hemophilia in the Russian royal family.